Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to sit down and do my favorite books of 2024. So I know we're already some ways into January. It has kicked off with great speed and a very intense start to the term for me in terms of work. So as soon as I started working, I've been so busy and so tired that I have not been up for filming until now, so I thought that I would finally get around to doing my favorite books of 2024. If you have seen my favorite books videos in the past, you will know that I don't do top books because I don't find that to be compatible with how I read. I usually don't read in terms of rating. I generally don't rate books, and I also find it difficult to compare qualities when they're so different in terms of genres, in terms of the thing that they want to accomplish, the authors and the books that they're writing. So I usually do categories for my favorites. So I'll just go through the categories one by one, and we'll end with my favorite book, favorite nonfiction, and favorite fiction. So first, my biggest achievement in terms of reading this year, this book feels like a big achievement for me. It is Middlemarch by George Eliot, which is not only a tome, but a book that I have tried to read at least 4 times before actually finishing it off in 2024. It's mostly to do with its scale. So Middlemarch, if you don't know, is about a whole community of people. It starts following two sisters, in particular Dorothea, and she's very smart. She is very religious and sort of moral and upright, and she ends up becoming interested in marrying a man, and that is sort of the starting point to the story, and we started to get introduced to the characters in this town of Middlemarch. And she is a red thread throughout the book, I would say, and definitely one of my favorite characters in the book. But then we get to know the new doctor that has just moved into the community. We get to know different families and different sort of conflicts that are happening between the families. We get to know the conflicts between the new doctor and sort of the old traditions, clashes between the new and the old medicine practice. We get to know so many different characters in this book that it's really a character study of an entire community. So I'm really happy that I finally got through and stuck to it this year and really enjoyed the process. I started reading it in May and finished it in September, so it did take me a long time, but I loved George Eliot's presence in the story, especially that she has a clear preference for some characters over others. I loved the warmness she shows to her characters in this community while also sort of criticizing them, poking fun at them. I just really got on with this book, and I know that this is a book that I will enjoy rereading, maybe even more than reading it on my first time and getting acquainted with the frame of the book. I am looking forward to sort of returning to it and looking more closely at the text itself. The next category I have is biggest surprise, and I think that would have to be Köpenhamn-trilogin or the Copenhagen Trilogy by Tove Ditlevsen. I read Childhood, which is the first part in the trilogy, a couple of years back, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. I never connected to it personally, and so it took me quite a long time to be inclined to continue on with the trilogy. But this summer I decided to start off with Childhood and moved my way immediately afterward to Youth and finally Dependence. And I just engulfed these books. I consumed them in a matter of days. I think 3 days maybe for all of the books, and it just stuck. I don't know what to say other than Ditlevsen got under my skin. I was compulsively reading while walking, which is usually for me is a sign that I am so drawn into a book that I cannot even consider putting it down for a small amount of time. That was how it felt reading this book. This trilogy, I'm talking about it in its entirety because I read them so quickly and so closely together. But I just loved Ditlevsen's voice. I think I won't go into the memoir and fiction aspect of it because that is something I probably will be talking about when I talk about my January reading, as I have been reading more of Ditlevsen this month. But I just fell in love with her voice. I felt so compelled by especially Dependence. I think childhood is an introduction to a young sort of really intelligent child who doesn't fit in with her crowd, and she is chronicling the life of a child in a poor neighborhood in a situation where there's sort of a rougher side to life, and children are seeing violence, and girls in particular are expected to live in a certain way and live up to certain expectations. And that is sort of the backdrop to the voice of the narrator of the trilogy. And then in youth we see the beginnings of working and becoming interested in writing and sort of the budding life of a author. And in Dependence, the third and final part, the focus is a lot on the drug addiction and on marriage and motherhood, in contrast to the writing and the life of an author. And Dependence is definitely the part that I like the most, I think, because it's touching on themes that I find more interesting in comparison to the previous two books. But for me, it's sort of a package deal, and yeah, this came as a surprise how much I connected to the books, how much I enjoyed them, and have since decided that I want to read more of Ditlevsen's writing. My next category is new favorite author, which is a category I always have, and this year it's Alba de Cespedes, who wrote The Forbidden Notebook that I read in the summer as well, and it was translated by Anne Goldstein, I think. This was a magnificent book. I don't think I've done a wrap-up where I've talked about this book, but it's a character portrait of a woman who decides to buy a small black notebook. She's buying this forbidden item, and the forbidden nature of it itself is part of the appeal, I think. It's a transgression for her, but the core part of the core idea of this book is that the book is what she's writing in this little black notebook that she has bought that is forbidden and that she's keeping hidden from her family. So she's a wife, she's a mother, and an office worker. She's sort of battling, trying to be the best mother she can be for her two kids. She's trying to be the best wife she can be for her husband, and she's also providing the house with money that she earns through her day job. And she's trying to be everything for everyone, and as soon as she starts writing, she starts to see how unhappy she is, how much she is giving to everyone else, and how little she has for herself. She doesn't even have a place to put the notebook that she feels certain no one else will find it. So she has no privacy in her house. She has no room of her own, let alone a shelf or a drawer for herself that she's certain that no one will touch. And this book is about her relationship with all of these people in her life, and about the writing as a form of freedom, as well as a lens through which she starts to look at her life and realizing its shortcomings. I thought it was wonderful. I think it is so well crafted. The next category I have is most rereadable, and I have chosen 2 books for this. One of them is The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd, which I read as a buddy read with Lindy. I will put a link to her channel below. It's a short, dense book filled with beautiful nature writing. She's writing about the Cairngorm Mountains, I think it's called. So it's a specific mountain area, and she's writing about the fauna, the flora, the experience of climbing these mountains, what you're seeing in different parts of the mountains, the atmosphere, the weather, different aspects of experiencing this place. And it's very sensory, it's very beautiful, a lot of memories, and I think that the writing is so rich that I could see myself reading this every year and still find something new from it. I especially really loved reading this with Lindy, and it was a outstanding reading experience, and I think that is one of the reasons that I would want to revisit it, to be able to capture some of that magic again. The other one that I wanted to put in this category as a kind of bonus is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff, and I have already reread this in January this year because of Sarah from Hardcover Hearts read along that she does every year on January 1st. I will put again a link to her below. 84 Charing Cross Road is a letter exchange between Frank Dole and the other booksellers in a little shop in the UK, and Helen Hanff, an American writer, and they are exchanging. At first, Helen Hanff writes to this bookseller in the UK asking for very specific books that she's looking for and wanting to order. But then this book exchange continues as they become further acquainted, and a friendship builds over time, over decades actually. And I think it's one of the most heartwarming, hopeful books to me. I think if you have friends through the Bookish Online community, if you have international friends, I think a lot of this will resonate, how much we can be for each other through shared interests, through generosity, through sharing our lives with each other. And even though it might start off being just talking about books, it can also bloom into being an overall friendship, and where we share much more of our lives with each other. And I definitely resonate a lot with this book based on the friendships I've made through BookTube, and through the people I've already met, and through the people I hope I will get to meet. And therefore I feel like I will probably continue rereading 84 Charing Cross in January for the foreseeable future, because it's a great way to start off the new year and sort of be a reminder of this bookish community and what it has done for my life. The next category I have is favorite character. So I don't really have a lot of favorite characters. A lot of the time I enjoy following a character, but I don't necessarily love them. And I think that is sort of the case with this one. So it is Muhammad in or Mohammed in Hyper by Agri Ismail. I think he just stands out to me. Hyper is a family portrait. It's kind of an epic family portrait following a family who immigrate from Afghanistan and eventually end up in the UK, I think. And it follows each family member one at a time. But the first of the children that it follows is Muhammad. And he works in the financial world. He is an office worker, and the commentary in his narration was just, first of all, it was so funny and relatable a lot of the time. The comments he makes on the atmosphere in the office, sort of the unspoken rules of behavior and of his own behavior, and how, I don't know, there was something about the dynamic in that whole section that I absolutely loved, and that I thought was, like I said, so funny because it was so recognizable in terms of working in that kind of climate. Obviously it's very extreme. The working conditions is very poor a lot of the time, what he's talking about, but sort of the as I said, the unspoken rules of conduct, the norms, and sort of how one person's actions shapes and influences other people's actions. And I don't know, there was something about his voice that I really liked, and he definitely stands out in my memory in terms of characters. But I would also say that the narrator of The Forbidden Notebook is high up on my list. My next category is my favorite children's book / illustrated book. I read several fantastic picture books this year, and I specifically wanted to highlight Barbarnet by Clara Bertilsson. I think I should have looked that up. But it's a Swedish picture book about being different, about being accepted as different, and that your difference doesn't make you less, it just makes you different. And that we all can, if we're open-minded, that we can all see how, even despite our differences, that we can all see how we can connect and love and welcome all kinds of people. I think the themes, the point of the book is beautiful, especially for a young audience, but it's also one of the most, I don't know, iconic illustration styles. I think the illustration style in this just immediately grabbed my attention. I saw a photo of it at first, and as it was nominated for the August Prize for the children's category this year. And as soon as I saw the cover, I was interested because it's such a unique style. And I read it from my library, loved it, bought my own copy. I am going to look forward to rereading this one several times, and I can't wait to see what this author and illustrator brings out in the future. My favorite non-fiction of the year is Där kärlek sker by Bodil Sjöström. This was actually the winner of the category that I judged for the Prisma Prize this year. It's a Swedish queer biography, history of the HIV movement, period of time in Sweden. So it's combining Bodil's own memoir and her own memories of working with patients, of working with family and people affected by HIV, as well, and AIDS, as well as including several different accounts from either people who had been patients or knew people, loved ones, family, etc. And it's sort of a course of a biography, and I think it's outstanding, and I am so grateful that I got to read this book because of the prize, and I am so happy that we decided on this one as the prize winner for the biography category. If you read in Swedish, I would urge you to pick this one up. If not, then again, if I hear anything about an English translation, I will let you know. I think it is outstanding and does something very important for literature on AIDS in general, but especially for the Swedish context, which is something I feel like I haven't seen much of at all. It's talking about so many different facets of living through this period, from the prejudice, from the society around you, from being very involved in queer life and knowing more and more people dying or who had already passed. The last book I wanted to talk about in my favorite books of 2024 video is my best fiction, and that is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I was umming and ahhing because I've read several really great fiction books this year, but this one just hit me in a very particular way, and I know I've already talked about this book in one of my wrap-ups this year. I will leave a link to that below. But basically this book follows a couple. One of them is a marine biologist or a marine scientist, and she goes down a submarine for a period of time as a kind of field trip. She's doing some kind of research in there, and something happens on one of these trips. The marine scientist has returned, she's not the same, and her wife is chronicling this return and what is happening. And parallel to that, we have the chapters leading up to the crisis point. And the mystery surrounding this book, the way it's talking about water and deep water in particular, and all of the mystery in deep water that we don't know anything about. We know less about the deep oceans than we know about space, and this is fact. This is not fictional bits, and I find anything related to water is super fascinating, especially deep oceans, deep water, and life just behaves differently when you hit past a certain depth. And I think that background to the story really lends its sort of surreal nature, and I just love this book. I think Julia Armfield writes this relationship really well. She writes the mystery really well, and the pacing's perfect. It's tense and it's atmospheric. It is fascinating, and I just really enjoyed reading this one. And again, this is one of those books that I was reading while walking because it was so hard to put down. And I also did this as a buddy read with Robin, and I think again my buddy reading of this book really added to my enjoyment, because slowing down and really thinking through what I'm reading definitely added to the sense of appreciation I had for this book. So very grateful that I got to buddy read this with Robin, and fantastic book. Can't wait to read more of Julia Armfield. I have both her short story collection and her new novel on my shelves, so that will probably happen in 2025. But yeah, those are the books that I wanted to shout out and that I wanted to share with you from my reading year of 2024. Let me know if you read any of these books and your thoughts on them. Were they favorites for you when you read them, if you didn't read them this year? What were your favorite books of 2024? Let me know. Let's chat in the comments. I hope you are all having a great start to this new year and that you're taking care of yourselves, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.